Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special episode midday during the markets with my friend Sam Solid here. Sam, you run a Substack called Hidden Edge Capital, and you recently wrote about NuBank.
Yes, I did.
Pretty bullish.
Just a little bullish. Nah, I'm just
Just
kidding.
a little bullish.
Yeah, I'm very bullish NuBank.
Yeah, you have a position in this company, and I really wanted to have a conversation because this is a pretty exciting Q4 that's end up coming up, and I actually wanted to show the stock here really quickly. This company has went from a high of $16.15 to a low of $10.17, all in the matter of 3 months, and now we're somewhere in the middle here. Massive swing for a 3-month period. What exactly is going on?
Honestly, you saw the earnings last quarter, and I think we both know the analysts have been scrutinizing NuBank and the management as far as the non-performing loans have been, for the 90-day plus, have been curbing upward. Last quarter, we did see a little bit of a deceleration in terms of that uptick. But yeah, the trailing quarters have been going up for the NPL. So they've always been scrutinized every single call. But the company continues to perform, man. I mean, their net interest margin kind of ticked back a little bit, but like besides the one quarter, it's just been basically going up. They've been their average revenue per acquired client has been going up. They're gaining market share in Brazil with over 50% of the adult population, and so like it is like one of the most bullish stocks I could be bullish on. I know that sounds weird, but the company's doing really well, firing on all cylinders. Like they're growing their presence. Not only in Brazil, but also two major markets, Colombia and Mexico, not even penetrating 10% of the entire population. And in fact, Mexico is mostly unbanked. Like, I don't really need to lecture so much on how good the company is. We both know that.
Right.
But of course, macro always comes before fundamentals 90% of the time. Brazil is seeing a hike in inflation recently. The Brazilian central bank has to fight inflation by hiking rates to nearly 13.25%. They are projected to increase rates to about 15%. And as I was going to say as American citizens, but sir, you are a Canadian citizen. So quite the, but I mean, similar, these major central banks to fight inflation, they got to increase rates and tighten liquidity conditions. And that's what we've seen. And we saw what happened in 2022. The market is scared of that. And any hint, even in any market today where liquidity is projected to be tightening, there's going to be a lot of selling off going on the macro scale. And what gets sold off usually in negative macro environments or risk off environments is growth stocks. And NuBank is a very fast growing large company. That's actually the interesting part about it, is because like it's not a micro cap, it's not a small cap by any means. It's quite a big company with a very large presence, and I would personally say a pretty wide moat in Latin America. It's going to get sold off. That's just how it is.
Sort of the double whammy for NuBank here, right? Because financial stocks would get hit on a fundamental side in a fast changing macro environment, and sentiment on high risk stocks would also get changed. Maybe not fundamentally as much, but potentially people want to go on a risk off approach. NuBank kind of falls into both, and so I think the market got a little bit worried. But this is all of a sudden getting corrected pretty quickly, even before seeing Q4 numbers. Do you think that there is any real risk of coming back down to the $10 ranges or potentially even single digits?
Well, I'll tell you the major contributor to this happening, and it is measured on an FX basis. The USD BRL currency pair, that is basically the US dollar strength against the Brazilian real. Because NuBank gets 90% of the revenue from Brazil, they're going to be highly impacted by how strong the Brazilian dollar is in that country. And that has hit pivot lows since the dollar hit the 110 mark recently. To kind of explain that in more layman terms for people that might not really know how FX currencies work, is that when you have a rapidly rising currency strength, like let's take the US dollar, for example. When the US dollar goes up a lot, it's tend to be perceived as bad for emerging markets, which includes most of the Latin American countries, because liquidity is tightening against it, and basically their currency is weaker against our dollar. So therefore, money has to outflow from that country into the US dollar to be able to not lose any money per se. It's considered risk off. So if you actually pull up a chart, the USD BRL, you will see that that correlates around the time when NuBank bottomed, in addition to Mercado Libre, because it wasn't just NuBank that dropped a lot recently. It was also Mercado Libre, but the force was felt with NuBank mostly because it's directly tied with the banking system. Yep, there you go. See, so look, go to like right there, the bottom in around December. That's around the time, probably a couple weeks ahead of NuBank bottoming around $10. Today we see it around 13.5. It's seeing positive momentum today. And guess what else is up today? The Brazilian real is up today. US Treasury rates are up. Rates are down. Bonds are up. You know, that's seen as risk on, and money's flowing back to NuBank. And I think I've been saying this for a long time, man. Like it's something that a lot of investors need to understand. You need to understand the macro so you can fully understand the picture on why something gets sold off when it's sold off unjustly against fundamentals. We already talked about NuBank. It is a phenomenal company. They're growing massively. They're taking market share from 3 separate countries. David Velez is talking about going to the US. He's also talking about going to Argentina with Malay. I don't know, man. It's like a really good setup. And yeah, it already retraced like 50%, but I still think there's plenty of upside.
Yeah, it's funny how much it pulled back on this news. And obviously, I think, you know, the market's forward looking, so they're not picturing where it's actually going just today, but where it could potentially be going into the future. Yeah, exactly. So I think the market drastically overshot where they potentially thought that the exchange on the dollar versus the real would end up being. But this is sort of where, you know, I fall into my big weaknesses. I'm not able to interpret macroeconomic factors into the future. And so I pick the companies that are too strong that even during these times, I still believe that they'll be able to potentially grow faster than those problems, or just withstand them and potentially continue growing on into the future. I think NuBank falls into that perfectly. Now, going into more their business, is there any concerns for you in terms of saturation in Brazil? There's a little bit of slowdown on their credit card offerings in Q3. Are there any things like this that worry you for future NuBank growth?
Well, so one thing we got to think about is that when it comes to their credit portfolio decelerating quite a bit, they did address this in the recent earnings call. The reason why is because the Brazilian population, or at least the population that they do address and that are clients at NuBank, their credit scores are getting better. It is generally the younger adult population, the one that tends to take more risk in their job and career. But as Brazil continues to be a positive growth nation, that means that the spending power that the people have in the country are deemed a lot better, and they have like a lot of, like, let's say you have a 700 credit score, right? And you apply for credit. The bank looks at, or the company that underwrites that credit card, they look at it as you're less risk than someone who has, like, let's say a 600 credit score, right? So generally speaking, you will be inclined to take out more credit cards if you have a 600 score, because you need the money, and you're not, like, you know, I don't want to like make assumptions or anything, but generally people who have lower scores tend to carry a much higher credit debt, right? But if you are someone who has a 700 score, it's very likely you're paying off your balances and so on, which is attributed to the reason why the credit portfolio isn't growing as much, because of that fact that people don't really need to take that much credit. They could just pay off the balance every single month, and that's directly reported to how much revenue NuBank gets from that spread between their deposits as well as their credit portfolio.
Yeah. Now, they are currently in many new products. Obviously, they continue to expand their portfolio. And
I see what you did there. Nice.
What?
You said they're in many new products.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even mean to do that, but
yeah,
that's a good one. Now, you know, they're getting into payroll loans, that like they're secured loans. They're doing so well there. They're getting, you know, into many other things aside from the geographical changes that you also talked about. But now they're starting to do things that are sort of getting out of financial services, like the telecommunications card, the eSIMs. Sorry. Do you foresee that NuBank is sort of going to become more in the direction of a super app, and that people are going to use them for much more than financial services? Is that baked into what you're looking for NuBank, or do you just see them as what they're doing, they can continue to do, and that's all you care about?
Well, this is the reason why David Velez is a freaking all-star, man. Like I don't think he looks at NuBank as just a financial institution. I think he looks at it as a technology company. And that's really what it is, right? And what do technology companies do? What does Google do? They collect data. Data is crucial today because you are basing your future strategy on how you're implementing your business plans on the data that you're seeing. So if you see like let's say that they've collected so much data from Mexico and Colombia because a lot of that market is untapped, right? They're not banked, right? So who's collecting that data? Well, NuBank is the forefront of collecting that data. I'm not saying that Dave Les is going to go out and be like, who wants this data to the highest bidder? But data is super important, man. Like to be able to run all the metrics on it, to be able to decide, you know, should you target this particular adult population, or should you target ages 20 to 25 in Mexico, advertise more toward them? And on top of that, the fact that they're a technology company, they can target their advertisements towards specific populations based on application usage. So if they start creating partnerships with like Google or Meta, which could very well happen, dude, that is super bullish. Like, who has this much data on the financial population of Mexico more than NuBank? Probably other companies do, but when you really think about it, data is crucial today, especially when it comes to the AI cycle. NuBank is able to extend its arms to expand its verticals and revenue based on this fact set that they have so much data. And on top of that, they are improving their experience of working with this data with different technologies that they're already that far ahead of the legacy banks in these regions. Like Brazil, like in Brazil, right? You already know, like a lot of these big banks that used to run the show, I forget the name of the largest Brazilian bank. NuBank has surpassed them in terms of how many people are clients of NuBank, right?
But it might be Banco do Brazil. I think they might be one of the largest ones.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that their technology is legacy, but NuBank is coming it from like a technology native background, and they actually offer a lot of incentives for people to bank with NuBank versus these major banks in Brazil, where these banks in Brazil, their going logo was like, this is a privilege for you to bank with us, so therefore we're going to charge you all these fees. But NuBank is opening the door to all of these people, which at the end of the day, they're gathering your data. That's just how it is, right? That's how it is today. When you use Google, they're gathering your data. And that's super important, especially in this AI cycle, in my opinion. I think there is a lot more potential than probably what the market sees when it comes to this bank in terms of being able to use their data to bring in more revenue from other companies and partnerships.
So are you saying that they're going to end up using this to get into a wide stream of different partnerships and products? Or are you saying exclusively or specifically about more advertising dollars?
I wouldn't say more advertising dollars, because when you think about a NuBank, that's going to obviously whatever they're doing is beneficial for them in terms of targeting advertising and targeting certain audiences, because they are able to increase that average revenue per acquired customer. But also, I mean, you probably heard about the news where they acquired a large stake in Tyme, right?
Yeah.
So Tyme is the parent company, and Tyme Bank is one of the subsidiaries of Tyme. And Tyme is actually, the CEO of Tyme is actually like an ex-IT engineer who really focuses on the technology. It's like, I could kind of, I guess that's kind of where I went in this direction when I thought about technology, how it's perceived in NuBank. And then I watched more interviews with David Velez, where he like literally talks about the technology so much. And then when I watch an interview with the CEO of Tyme, he's also talking about technology like that. It's kind of like SoFi, right? Like, are you investing in SoFi because they're a bank, or are you investing in them because they have probably one of the leaders in back-end technology for banks?
Sure.
Right? Like
sure.
I think that is probably, I don't know what to say, the Trojan horse when it comes to NuBank, the fact that they have this capability. And I don't know if the market's seeing it. The market is literally just looking at the numbers, look at the macro. It's like, sell the stock off, right? We don't like the fact that their NPL loans over 90 days are going up, that sort of thing. I hope that answered your question.
No, I mean, honestly, I think I would put NuBank in terms of their technology stack multiples ahead of even SoFi. Like they are full focused on being a technology company.
Mhm.
So I give them a ton of credit there. Everyone talks about, I see it in the chat sometimes. Oh, well, if NuBank comes over to SoFi, maybe they can do a partnership. The thing is NuBank doesn't need SoFi. It's, they're very advantaged. That being said, though, Tyme, really quickly, because I have not done a lot of information on them. Were they the Middle East, North Africa bank, fintech?
So Tyme Bank is basically the new bank of South Africa and the Philippines
South
right
Africa.
now.
Okay.
NuBank acquired, was it $150 million stake in the company? And I think it's valued at 1.5 billion. So maybe it's like around 10%. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, I mean, does NuBank need to go into these regions? I don't know. Does it really, if they have 10% stake in a company that's already doing it, why would they go in there? But they do have leg in it, right? And they're going to be both learning from each other, Tyme Bank and NuBank. I feel like NuBank is, they're not going to focus so much on expanding on different products. They're going to look on gaining their outreach toward different markets. I mean, Dave Velez mentioned that they're not going to bank in the UK. All right. They're changing their headquarters to the UK. It's more for tax purposes and policies, whatever it is. Right now they're in the Cayman Islands. So like, it might be beneficial for them in the long run by a couple of basis points, but that's going to matter when you're talking about all the revenue that they're bringing in. But he was talking about coming to the US, which I don't think it's going to happen for like 5 or 10 years. US is very saturated when it comes to banking.
5 to 10, eh? I have
I mean, I don't know. What you think it's going to be sooner?
I think it'll be in the next 24 months.
Wow. It's just, why?
I think that there's a massive Latin American population that's unbanked in the United States. And I think that they will go specifically to that demographic.
Because it's Latin American. Actually, that's true. That's true. If I live in Los Angeles, where clearly there's a large Latin American population. I've noticed that I mean, like a lot of Latin American population in LA, they tend to be more, and I only say this from my experience of what I've seen from my friends and everything, is like they enjoy going to like these Latin stores, where I would drive by and be like, I don't know if I would go in there to shop for clothes, but like I hear that my friend's wife like swears by that store. She buys all of her clothes there and stuff. So yeah, actually that is true. They tend to be more attracted to that type of those type of businesses.
Even whenever I went to Miami, and the amount of like Latin American banks that are starting to offer services up in Miami, and like putting up billboards and everything, like even Inter & Co was up there promoting their super app for Miami. And I bet that there will be a lot of cross-pollination between those types of things, where I think the SoFis of the world that tech advantage, but potentially are not quite reaching that specific audience, that I think there'll probably be a large audience there. And of very high earnings, right? So it's similar to the Mexico demographic, but almost on steroids, that they're earning so much more, but a smaller population.
Yeah. Someone asked, what does it mean by unbanked? Unbanked means people who like literally don't have a bank. They keep their money in their possession, all their savings. You'd be surprised. A lot of people in a lot of these third world countries or even emerging markets do that. They don't trust banks and so on. Serves them right. I mean, like it would be very difficult to trust the bank if they're going to charge you like 5 or 10% interest or overall margin in fees just to bank with them, because they look at it as being a privilege to bank with them, not an opportunity for yourself.
Can you hear me, by the way? I just had a big problem with my mic. Is it working?
Yeah, it's working fine. You were on mute for a second.
Okay.
It's actually pretty interesting you mentioned that. I might have to look a little bit more into that as far as coming to the US. I mean, David Velez did say that, the CEO, he did say that that the policies in the US under the Trump regime are favorable toward them. So yeah, maybe it would actually, the cost of them coming to the US in terms of being in a saturated market, maybe the numbers do line up for him. So he sees that as potential.
Now, I think that the banking relationship, whenever they come to the States, will be very different. I think that they might go more of a Wise or PayPal approach, where they end up partnering with a larger bank and bring more of a fintech service up this way to, get grips in the market and then start to look for more regulatory approvals. But yeah, I think they want US dollars. I think that's what you're seeing with the amount of USDC promotion that they end up having here. I think that they see what's happening with Brazilian reals, and now they're promoting a ton of US dollar action. I think that they're looking to get into Argentina now. They want to diversify away from, a high 80+% saturation of Brazil.
It's pretty tough. Like they definitely have to diversify. I think that's probably something that they're gonna have to, attack, is to reduce that concentration in one country. Leaves yourself open for a lot of macro impact. We've seen it. We've clearly seen it. Nearly 50% haircut just based on the Brazilian macro. And we're already starting to see the recovery. But yeah, I mean, even if Mexico and Colombia are growing at phenomenal rates, they're still like 10% of the revenue. So it would take a little bit of time for that to actually make a difference. And even if they were to tap into the US markets, that might possibly be a much more rapid acceleration. But let's not forget, Brazil they're still acquiring more customers in Brazil. Only 50% of the Brazilian adult population. And it's not just trying to move laterally and scaling out in Brazil, but more of scaling up, where their existing clients are starting to enroll in more services or possibly remove their relationships with other banks and then consolidate in NuBank. So that would be something pretty interesting.
Absolutely. More money is going on to Pix payment services, and this is leading more like less cash transactions, more digital currency, and the companies that are doing best on digital is by far the fintechs like NuBank, which is the largest there.
Yeah. If I go and I ask like my parent or my mom or my in-laws, like, hey, when was the last time you've been to a bank? Like they'll probably like yesterday, or I went earlier this morning, right? I have, besides one time when I had to go to a bank to deposit a check that same day, I haven't walked into a bank other than maybe an ATM if I needed money, which I barely carry money nowadays. Months? I could probably go years without walking into a bank. Yeah, everything's digital. Like I use Apple Pay, I use credit cards if I have to, where Apple Pay isn't taken, and I just make all my payments through auto pay, or I do it online. Like this is just the way of the age, dude. I'm much older than you. Like I think I'm like a generation Y. I don't know which generation I am because I was born in the 80s. When were you born? You were born in like the late 90s, right?
Yeah.
So then you're not a millennial. I don't know what it is. You're Gen Z, whatever it is. But
Yeah, it depends on what article you read, but it seems like I'm either the last year of millennial, the first year of Gen Z.
Okay, yeah, I'm more of like the millennial, Gen Y, whatever it is. But this is the way it is today. Like it's not going anywhere. Even JP Morgan is getting rid of a bunch of B&M brick and mortar banks.
Yeah,
across the board, because you know how much overhead it is to run these banks. You got to worry about the staffing. You got to worry about a cleaning crew. You got to worry about the property, leasing, and everything, all that. And on top of that, like there's so much overhead when it comes to it. The rate of expansion with brick and mortar banks is so much slower than digital. Like NuBank can just flip the switch and probably be in the US in the next 24 months, like you said, if they really wanted to. And they might. Like, but if they were to come over here and build a branch, forget about it. That's going to take forever. That's going to take forever to do.
Like, I mean, honestly, I really liked whenever you highlighted that they're going to be moving up market, because I think that this is one of those things, not only expanding share of wallet for the customers that they already have here, but going after the really affluent customers of Brazil is something that fintech has really struggled to do. Private client still happens in Brazil, and it's dominated by the big banks. But now you're starting to see a lot of the products that NuBank is starting to put out is like institutional client or institutional products. Or
that's interesting. That's sticky money, man.
Yeah. They're making institutional like securitized fixed income products, all of these different things for funds to invest in. Because whenever you're growing that fast, there is going to be saturation concerns, but not saturation in financial services in general. It just might be saturation of a single product or something, or product or service.
Exactly.
But they are moving so quickly, And I'm just always trying to see what are they going to do next. And another statistic that I find so fun with NuBank is they always talk about the percentage of saturation of the adult population. They don't talk about the 4 million users that they have that are under 18. NuBank also talks about, David Velez said on an interview one time, he said, anyone that's 7 or older is our customer. Like, that is a crazy way of thinking about a generational business, right? He's not looking at this company in terms of quarters. He's looking at it in terms of decades.
Yeah, if I recall, I think the average age population in Brazil is much younger than America. America is like really up there when it comes to the average adult population because of the baby boomers. China's even worse. Japan is way worse.
Yeah.
But when you think of these Latin American countries, it's generally a very young.
I think it's 33 for Brazil last time I checked.
That is very young, right? Yeah. They have to go for the adult population right now. But the population for like teenagers and getting older, like that's going to resolve itself. If you get the adult population who are the parents of these kids, they're going to spread the news and it's going to be assumed like, let's bank with NuBank. I don't want to assume that's going to happen, but like, as far as the digital era goes, like in 10 years, there's probably going to be half of the brick and mortar banks that you see today. Not because of the fact that they're going to go out of business, because these businesses are going to realize like, we don't need this many banks to function. We're going to increase our bottom line. We're going to increase our top line by getting rid of these banks. And it's going to slow us down if we keep them. It is just the way of the world.
And they're trying to stay ahead of all of this, right? In terms of whether that's cryptocurrency they're acquiring business in. Now they're buying AI businesses to try to help with personalized recommendation. So Hyperplane, that was a very interesting one. This is a really interesting company.
You can't do AI without data. Without data, you cannot utilize AI. And it's not even just any data. Like, you need good processed data, not garbage data. Like, you don't want to collect like these clicks from these random things or whatever. Like, you don't want to just collect anything you want because storage is money, right? But they're already ahead of the game with this. They've been doing this for years. So what's going on, Matt Money?
Yeah, we got a couple of amazing people in the chat here. Matt Money, B-Dubs, ETF, June. A lot of consistent people, which is great.
Do you mind if I share the link to my Substack on here?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay, so if you guys want to look at the articles I released on NuBank, unfortunately the price isn't $10 or $10.20 anymore for the price of NuBank per share. It's 30% higher. But I still think there's a lot of potential, right? I still think that for a long-term hold and even some asymmetric upside, I still think there's a lot of potential. But obviously the risk reward, it does require higher risk for reward at this point. So, be mindful, not financial advice, but for me personally, I would buy shares today of NuBank to hold for a long-term position for sure. I would have my position built out. So, but for someone who's DCAing.
Yeah. I haven't purchased in a while, but I didn't end up getting at the 10. I put this barrier in my mind that we would hit single digits, and it's one of those things, right? You got a risk whenever you're buying and a risk whenever you're selling. And whenever I set my barrier at single digits, it came very close, but it didn't break that barrier.
You should have done the pre-market or extended hours purchase, because on August 5th, it actually got like deep into the 9s. And I think, what was it, a few weeks ago, it got into like just a tip of like the high 990s, like pre-market. But yeah, like I was doing a lot of buying.
I was doing a lot of buying on August 5th, so I don't regret.
Yeah, me too.
But it wasn't NuBank, not one of them.
Okay.
But hood at 14.
What'd you buy? That was pretty crazy. Like I bought some hood, but it was a swing trade and I am long sold on it. It's like, wow. Like, of course, like, don't worry guys, it'll go up because I sold. Congratulations. You're welcome.
If you remember Tevis, Tevis, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So he tweeted and he said, well, I want to buy hood at 14 so I have a lower average than Tanner. And I was like, I'm not going to let this guy. So I bought a lot and he didn't even end up buying. So he just talked me into a good position and he didn't even take advantage of it. But I
have to say, when it comes to Tevis, like, I feel like a lot of people knocking him for, selling some stuff before it goes up. You know, we all do. Like, I could give you like a whole list of stuff that I sold and it ran like 200, 300%. And things that maybe I bought at the top. Like, it just happens. Like, leave the guy alone. Like, he's a nice guy, very smart guy too. Like, leave the guy alone. He's a good guy. And you know what, to be honest, like, can't really blame him with SoFi. That thing like doubled in just a matter of a few months. So,
Yeah, no, he's getting a lot right now. I mean, Hims,
oh,
Tesla,
wow. Yeah.
Bitcoin, he's doing very well. So what's it called? You were in your Substack, you actually highlighted a lot of changes in the population demographics for, well, not just the change in population, but also the change in GDP. Can you talk through some of the things with NuBank in terms of, you know, what are some potential long-term tailwinds for these countries, which is essentially the entire population for, or addressable population for NuBank?
Yeah. Do you mind if I share my screen
Not
and just
one bit.
share my article? Okay, cool. So I am going to share my screen of my Substack. This is the back end version, so you guys might not be able to see this. Actually, if I do this, yeah, here we go. So this is what you guys would see if you go into the Substack. You go to that link. If I scroll down to Brazil, NuBank Brazil macroeconomics over here, like you were saying, Tanner, I highlight the Brazil GDP per capita for Brazil. Well, I just said it twice. The Brazil GDP per capita PPP, and this is basically the pricing power of the Brazilian dollars per unit or per capita in Brazil as far as the GDP rising. This is a good comparison to use if you're comparing different countries, because different countries have different pricing power, but this kind of like alleviates all the noise to kind of make a comparison. And we could see over here that for the next few years, like, it's just going up, which means that the Brazilian population, like the average adult in Brazil, their currency, or they have more pricing power over the next 3 years. And like, this isn't just a little bit, this is a lot. That's 90% of the revenue for NuBank, or 85%, I forget the exact number. Colombia, one of the emerging markets that they're in, this is also going up. And then Mexico as well. Like, this one's going up the most, I would say, if you look at it from a year-over-year growth rate. And it's actually speculated to re-accelerate coming into 2026. I think this is actually going to go up a lot more, because I took all of these numbers and accounted for all of the macro back when I released this article on December 26th. Obviously, we have a new president in office who has mended relationships with Mexico. He's looking to continue doing that. So I think that sets up a very bullish backdrop, especially when he mended relationships with the Colombian president as well. We saw what happened with that quarrel back and forth. And Brazil, the only thing that I would say is risk when it comes to this, because Brazil is part of the BRICS union. The BRICS is basically a union between Brazil, China, Russia, and India, and a few more other countries, where they want to de-dollarize the US dollar as the global reserve currency. Personally, I don't think they're going to be successful at doing that. And I think that is what Trump is going to go for. So if Trump is able to bring Brazil to our side, that's going to be very bullish for the sentiment of the Brazilian economy. They're already growing at a considerable rate. If they do that, man, it's gonna be pretty, that's for sure. But I don't want to say this. I'm just excited. I have a position in NuBank, so I have to be bullish, right? I have to make these comments. Yeah. But you know, I can't speculate what's gonna happen in the future. There's risk with everything. But clearly, I'm very bullish in NuBank.
We think with the most optimal hats on sometimes.
Have to.
After we've made our purchases.
Let the money talk.
Yeah. No, for sure. But what are your thoughts on Q4 in general, or potentially, now I know they don't really do this, but what do you think Wall Street might start to think for 2025 and beyond? Because in my opinion, they seem a little bit bearish to what is actually going to happen.
So I think Wall Street's a bit more realistic, and so is management in NuBank, where the amount of revenue they get from Brazil is pretty large. Like, they can't sustain like near triple digit growth when it comes to Brazil. So of course that's going to decelerate. But one thing we've got to remember is that their net interest is going up. So even though they're making less money on a year-over-year basis in terms of acceleration, that doesn't mean that they're not making, even though they're making less on the top line in terms of growth, that doesn't mean they're making less on the bottom line. That means that they are running leaner and able to make more money on the bottom line, which is ultimately the most important part. Like if you look at their free cash flow margins, that's expanding. If you look at their operating income, that's expanding. That's the most important part. And currently what you see in the price to earnings ratios, which is, that's how I created my targets. I was very conservative with these estimates, man. Like I think end of 2025, NuBank is going to be above $16, and end of 2026 is going to be above 19. Very conservative, because that's assuming today's price to earnings ratio projected in the future, right? So this is not considering how fast their earnings are growing, and their earnings are growing very fast. And that's even if you look on seekingalpha.com, you can see the estimates for Wall Street. They're pretty good too. So why did this get sold off? I don't know. I don't know why it got sold off. It doesn't make sense, but that's why we're here. We're here to see past all this noise and figure out, like, conservatively, I say 16, 19, 2025, 2026, end of year. But base case, I think it's more like in the 20s for both years, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm more along those lines. When here, I'll bring up Seeking Alpha really quickly, because one, you're absolutely right that the I find on a quarterly basis, Wall Street's pretty good at predicting what's going to happen on the quarters, although they continue to beat earnings, but they get very close here. On the
Well, they
years,
revise them, so
yeah, well, that's true. Very, like, other than most recently, which we started to see a downtick in the November, December area, which lines up with what happened to the stock. But here, let me go ahead and bring this up really quickly. It's just, in my opinion, that the 2025 and 2026 numbers, and then, like, for example, you were showing off the 2027 numbers had re-accelerated in EPS growth.
yes,
It's not actually,
that's
of my
actually
opinion.
really interesting.
Sorry?
That was actually really interesting that was on there, but I don't know if that's because there were less analysts that were reporting on 2027.
That's 100% what it is.
Yeah.
So if we take a look here, there's 14 analysts practically across through 24 to 26. 27 is one analyst. But that goes to show you that the difference in the way that some analysts are thinking about this, 60% growth in 2027, while the rest of the analysts are actually bringing that average down to potentially 40%. And I think that analyst might actually be more correct in terms of large EPS growth through to those years. Now, maybe not 60% through 2027, but, easily, I could see 50% growths all the way through, which is crazy for a bank.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, you'd have to have more concentration in emerging markets other than Brazil. And then also on top of that, they need to, well, they're already growing pretty fast, but they would need to reaccelerate for that to happen. But hey, man, anything is possible. We'll see what happens. Like, I wonder who that one analyst is. I think if I look him up, like, am I going to see your picture on there? Like, are you that analyst?
No, I wonder who it is though, but and I actually don't know how to check unless you go individually and try to
you
find.
cleared your throat at like the right time.
Yeah.
Just kidding around. Just kidding, dude.
But what's it called? In my opinion, I think that Mexico is going to grow much faster than a lot of people think. I think people are looking at this business through just the eyes of Brazil, and it's not going to be Brazil. It's going to be Brazil and Mexico. Colombia is going to make up, potentially even a negative impact, because it's going to be so, like, it's going to be a while till they scale that out.
Colombia is tough. We already saw the pushback from the president in Colombia. Like, it's going to be tough.
It's going to be a little bit harder, but I think Mexico is already showing that, like, this is going to be a big leg of their business. And I don't think that Wall Street is pricing that in very well.
I don't think they are. Maybe they're starting to price it in, because we did see quite a hike up. But we are also seeing the Brazilian real go up as well, which means that there's more pricing power for citizens there. We're really coming off very negative sentiment for Brazil. I didn't want to get too much into it, but yeah, I mean, if you guys check out the article, I did write about the new central bank president in Brazil. I don't know if they call him president, commissioner. I don't know. The Jerome Powell of Brazil, right? So there you go. There's a new Jerome Powell of Brazil. And the guy is President Luna's right-hand man, or he was, very pro-capitalistic. So I don't know. That seems like when you have like a businessman as the head of the central bank, there's a pretty good chance he's going to do what is pro-business in terms of monetary policy. So we'll see.
Yeah. Matt says, if I'm buying leaps or shares of these businesses, I'm only buying shares of NuBank. However, I almost got talked into buying some pretty long dated leaps for NuBank. I think it was $17 prices or something like this. I mean,
that's very risky for you.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it over the next 2 years, but honestly, I do actually keep things pretty conservative. I pick very potentially risky. However, I don't see it as very risky, but big growth names. But I keep my actual investing style very conservative. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're young. I don't want to call out your age or anything, but you certainly are in the game a lot sooner than I was, and that puts you that far ahead. I mean, the thing is, like, people are pounding options and stuff because, like, maybe they get excited with like seeing a lot of people do money. Like, I know there's certainly a lot of people who dabble in options, like myself, with just a small percentage portfolio. But it's very enticing to want to see certain quote unquote gains very quickly. But at the end of the day, like, everyone should have a number that they'll be happy with to retire with. And that's the number you should go for, not like 10 times that amount. And if you are in your 20s and you overlay your 8% times the amount of DCing you're doing every single week, I don't want to give like a whole spiel on that, but if you keep putting in X amount of dollars every single month into the stock market, and the stock market appreciates 8% on average every year, annualized over 100 years, and you reach your dollar amount in the next 20 years, why do you need to play options? There's no reason to be that risky. Why do you need to play YOLO? Why do you need a YOLO stuff? Why do you don't need to do that? You're already going to hit your goal if you just be patient. Patience is the number one key in the stock market, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm really trying to benefit off that.
You have
I know
been.
a lot of people call me young. I'm like almost 10 years into this journey already, and coming up in October, I'll be investing in tech for almost 10 years. So
yeah, I mean, when they say young, it just means like compared to the average person in Wall Street, you are pretty young.
Sure.
Obviously, the content creation scene is quite different, a much younger population. I would be considered old in that population. I'm not even that old. But yeah, dude, like, honestly, I wish I was your age when you started. Like, if only I was aggressive like you when I started, I would have probably bought NVIDIA at like $4.
Yeah. So what's it called? Whenever we talk about investing versus shares versus options really quickly, I also think another thing that I really have a hard time stomaching is, well, trying to price in black swans, and you can see how that could be a problem. It's impossible to do, hence the name Black Swan. And things happen. And if you had long dated options on growth companies that were expected to do very well, and looking at a normal environment, of course they would hit those numbers. But it's very hard to predict out COVID or war or something like this. Like these things can drastically change the course of your investments. And if you invest in shares, I will live longer than those potential problems. Or at least I'll hope to. And if I don't, I'm not going to worry about the trade anyway.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with dabbling in options. It really depends on risk tolerance, and that varies from individual to individual. Like, some people, they can be whole portfolio full of options and they're fine with it. They can sleep at night. At the end of the day, it's like, can you sleep with this much risk and volatility in your portfolio, or can you? And if you can't, then it's not sustainable. If you can, then it's like, by all means, go do it.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to cover on the NuBank topic?
No, dude, I'm good. Actually,
there's one thing that I want to bug you on, because everyone looks at NuBank as more of a consumer bank. But what do you think about it as a business service? So their amount of merchants that they end up growing, the way that I actually look at this, it's actually a big part of my thesis here, is similar to PayPal or Block, for example, where they have a very close relationship with both the merchant and the consumer, and potentially tying in both of them. So offering their consumer sides of their bank products to purchase from their merchant side of the bank, and actually creating like a dual-sided network that maybe you're not pricing in advertising dollars into NuBank. I think that's going to be a major part of their revenue stream, pushing products directly through on a shopping segment of their tab.
Yeah, I mean, It's kind of hard to do that because they do highlight their consumer segments and the consumer metrics. I haven't really projected that into future years, but I mean, you're called future investing, so of course you're going to do that. But I mean, that is very interesting. Like if they were to partner up with, like, especially to come to the US, if they were to partner up with Shopify, that would be pretty amazing if they did. And in fact, let's not forget, because I know you're investing in Shopify. Let's not forget, like before Shopify, when it was like $30, like they weren't having this many partnerships as much as they do right now. Now they're an integral part in a lot of the back end consumer retail store, online retail stores, right? So if NuBank does get into that, where they start creating these partnerships, that would flatten out. I wouldn't say it would flatten out its growth, but that would flatten out its acceleration in growth, or its growth rate, where it's not as volatile as we see it today. Because at the end of the day, when you have institutional businesses banking with you and so on, that tends to decrease the volatility of your revenue, because of the fact that businesses tend to budget out certain things over the course of multiple years. So they can't just be like one day, you know what, we don't want to bank with you guys anymore. Whereas a consumer has that option to do that. Like they could just be like, I could just be like, I don't want to bank with JP Morgan anymore. I want to go over to SoFi. And I could do that if I really wanted to. But businesses don't usually do that. So enterprise and corporate and less small businesses, more medium-sized, large businesses, if you build relationships with that is definitely bullish for a company in terms of its upside.
You know what's interesting? If you look at the statistics on NuBank's business side, they're having a better time growing into the higher side business market than in the small business market. So they're getting more medium-sized businesses than small businesses.
Well, it's probably generally because the small businesses, if they're brick and mortar, like they're more in tune with going to like a regional bank versus anything to get better loans and better rates. I mean, in fact, in the US, like the reason why a lot of regional banks actually exist is because regional banks tend to have experts who are able to measure the risk of people locally, because they are from that area and that's their specialty, versus a small business going to JP Morgan for like a $200,000 loan. They're going to get a way worse rate versus going to a regional bank like TFC or something.
Yeah. And it's not like the things that I'm expecting for their shopping tab are too far out. I mean, they're already, if you look up NuBank Purple Pages, they're already trying to do this. You know, they're trying to connect their merchants with their customers. And I just think that that's going to save them a lot of costs for the Visas and all the payments companies in the world that don't necessarily need to be a part of the transaction if they're transacting between NuBank account to NuBank account. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very excited about that. I think that's what's going to be the future of financial services.
Yeah, pretty much. I agree, man.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me put some links in the chat here. You can check out Sam Solid on X and check out his Substack as well. And anything else that you'd want to say, Sam?
No. Hey, did you put in like a new wall background or anything? Yeah. Are you like in a new place? Wow, that looks amazing, man. Nice
same background. I haven't even finished it. I'm just lazy. But just a
that doesn't look
extra.
like laziness to me. That looks like a good job. Don't be too hard on yourself, man.
It's a little bit of sound. It's better on the sound in the room. Yeah. So
cool. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks so much for coming. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much. Bye for now.
Bye.